Political polarization is a complex phenomenon, and as we mentioned earlier, it requires change at multiple levels. Today we look at the suggestions of several experts. These include alterations at the individual, group, and institutional levels. We need to change minds, build bridges between people with disparate beliefs, and alter the way politics is done. Ezra Klein makes a number of recommendations for how to reduce political polarization, some of which we mention here. The first is to get rid of the filibuster, electoral college, and gerrymandering, which we have discussed at greater length in other videos. The filibuster makes it harder to pass legislation. The electoral college gives undue weight to areas of lower population. And gerrymandering has been used by both parties to skew state representation. One under-recognized option is to use ranked choice voting. This is a system in which the candidate with the majority vote wins, but if there is no majority, the bottom-ranked candidate is dropped, and the remaining votes are reallocated iteratively. It allows for every vote to count and encourages increased voter turnout. Here's a video by Represent Us that shows the advantages of this system.
Here's the thing I never want to have to do again. Vote for the lesser of two evils. But every time an election rolls around, we end up with the same two choices, over and over and over again. Instead of positive, issue-focused campaigns that encourage us to vote for the person we like the most, we get mudslinging, outrageous lies, fear-mongering, and campaigns that make half the country hate the other. How is it that in a country with so many different people and ideas, we keep getting stuck with the same two options? It's no accident. The way we vote only ever gives you two choices who have any real chance of winning. It's literally built into the system. On the surface, the American system makes a lot of sense. Every citizen gets one vote, and the candidate with the most votes wins. But it also creates a huge flaw called the spoiler effect. Here's how it works. Let's take the entire electorate and boil it down to 100 voters. And let's put everyone in order of their political preferences. The most conservative on the right, the most progressive on the left, everyone else falls somewhere in between. Now, when we've got just two candidates to choose from, the folks on the right vote for the Republican, those on the left vote Democrat, and the 5 to 10% in the middle who might vote either way end up tipping the election. But what happens when you introduce a third-party candidate? If that candidate is progressive, the progressive vote is split between two good candidates, and the conservative wins. If they're conservative, their vote is split, and the progressive wins. Voters get that by voting for that third-party candidate, they make it more likely that their least favorite candidate is going to win. So rather than voting for the candidate they like best, most voters choose the lesser of two evils. In this system, the winning candidate almost always wins with support from less than half of the votes. They don't even have a majority of support, yet they win and represent the whole electorate. And this is how we pick the most powerful human on the planet? Come on. Repeat this pattern over and over, and you can quickly see how we get a race to the bottom. Here's the good news. There's a small tweak we could make that lets you vote for whichever candidate you want without having to worry about the spoiler effect. It's called ranked choice voting, and here's how it works. Instead of choosing just one candidate, you rank candidates in order of preference. If your first choice is mathematically eliminated, your vote automatically goes to your backup. Let's look at how this would work using the example of the 2016 presidential election. Say you're a conservative who wants to vote for Gary Johnson. In our current system, you probably felt pressure to vote for Trump because you didn't want to split the conservative vote and elect Hillary. But with ranked choice voting, you just put Johnson first, and Trump is your backup. If Johnson doesn't win, your vote is automatically transferred to Trump. Or say you're a progressive who loves Jill Stein. And instead of being forced to use your one and only vote on Hillary, you could put Stein first and Hillary is your backup. You get it. The beauty of ranked choice voting is that it lets you vote for the candidates who most closely align with your values and gives America a much clearer picture of what the electorate really wants. No more settling for the lesser of two evils. You can vote your conscience without hurting your own interests. So now you're probably thinking, that sounds amazing, but that's never going to happen in the US. But here's the twist. It already has. RCV is already in use in cities across America, and Maine just changed their statewide elections to RCV. We're bringing conservatives and progressives together to pass more laws just like this, state by state, so we can fix America's corrupt political system from the bottom up. These laws are based on model legislation called the American Anti-Corruption Act. They fix our broken elections, stop political bribery, and end secret money. Go to www.represent.us to join us.
We can also make voting easier by automatic voter registration, mail-in ballots, ballot boxes, and, in general, simplifying the entire voting process. This, however, should be done in a way that does not compromise voter security. It's also important that we become aware of how politicians and the media pull our strings. In other words, how they manipulate us without our frequently knowing. Many of us can also be more active in local politics, where we can have more of a say in what actually happens. Boehme likens the conflicts we are having now to a dysfunctional family that needs therapy in order to learn how to communicate and cooperate. He describes a number of organizations in the U.S. that have been attempting to mend fences between opposing political sides. These organizations bring individuals from the two sides of the political spectrum together to learn and work out their differences. Braver Angels is a nonprofit that brings together an equal number of quote-unquote reds and quote-unquote blues to converse in small group settings. The meetings are moderated by volunteers who guide and facilitate the discussions. Members of each side are allowed to express their views while also examining the problems and limitations of their own side. They then engage in various exercises. For example, on one, they are asked to describe the common stereotypes about their side and whether there is any truth to those views. The goal of Braver Angels is not to produce political consensus, but to establish social trust. Techniques from therapy are of great significance here. The practice of deep listening, mindful speech, avoiding the giving of advice, not interrupting, pausing to process someone's response, and the sharing of how one feels. These can all contribute to greater understanding and empathy. The organization 100 Days in Appalachia is a group of different news organizations that focuses on truth-based reporting. They acknowledge that the national media have exploited their differences. Their goal is to report the real stories of people who live in the region, to show their diversity and complexity. For example, the journal Sentinel featured bipartisan solutions to a U.S. Supreme Court case on gerrymandering. Local news outlets have dwindled dramatically in recent years, and groups like this can help people to better understand and relate to one another. The National Conflict Resolution Center, or NCRC, is devoted to mediating court disputes and has been quite successful in this, as well as in training volunteers on how to do it, with more than 10,000 such individuals around the globe. They started a campaign to promote civil discourse in government and schools. For example, they have trained dialogue ambassadors at many college campuses to lead circle discussions where students with opposing views can come together. Conflict resolution is the process by which two or more parties can find a peaceful resolution to their dispute. It acknowledges that individuals are suspect to a number of emotional and cognitive traps and seeks to work around these to come to an agreement. These organizations can engage in mediation, arbitration, and litigation. What is clearly needed is for more organizations to train their members on these kinds of techniques. Political organizations in particular could benefit from this. For instance, if all members of the U.S. Congress were trained on conflict resolution, then better legislation might be passed more quickly. Examples of other organizations that are working to build bridges include America in One Room, Better Angels, Crossing Party Lines, and Make America Dinner Again. However, we should be cautious about the success of these groups. The research that we covered in other videos shows that these kinds of interactions, if done incorrectly, can actually cause retrenchment rather than rapprochement. Also, because there are so many factors contributing to polarization, it makes sense to create change across all of them simultaneously. We will end with Boehme's 5 keys to being a bridge builder. The first is to admit the past, educate others about it, and refuse to idealize it. The second is not to label people. Although it may be convenient to think of someone as conservative or liberal, individuals are, of course, much more complex than that. Number 3, it's okay to embrace conflict. People can still get along even if they don't agree on everything, and in fact, conflict is a part of free society. Number 4 is to learn to listen. Our first impulse is to talk over others rather than acknowledge what they have to say. And then finally, dialogue by itself can go a long way, but it might not be enough to change people's minds. So we need to effect change in other ways as well.